Thank you for coming to Starbright Storytime. This is the overview for week 12, the review of books read. The first book is Roxaboxen by Alice McLerran, illustrated by Barbara Cooney. This book is the land of make-believe. It's all about how children use their imagination to create another world, a world that is remembered for a lifetime. It takes place in an arid climate, desert lands, and it's a story I think a lot of children could relate to. That land of make-believe that is created amongst friends and, as I said, remembered for a lifetime. Roxaboxen by Alice McLerran, illustrated by Barbara Cooney. The next book, just scoot these over a little bit. The next book is Peach and Blue. This is by Sarah S. Kilborne, with paintings by Steve Johnson and Lou Fancher. This is a story about a peach who longs to explore the world. And Peach finds a friend in this large blue-bellied toad who has many siblings and wants to explore his world to get away from all of his siblings. And they meet, and Toad enlists the help of his brothers and sisters to give Peach an opportunity to explore and enjoy the world before she expires. Honestly, it's a very beautiful tale of friendship. They create a bond, they share experiences together, they make memories together, and the illustrations are lovely. Peach is a fruit. Peaches expire. And they agree that they will enjoy each other even if they don't last forever. They'll enjoy the time they have together. Peach and Blue. It's a lovely storybook. It's a great bedtime story by Sarah S. Kilborne, with paintings by Steve Johnson and Lou Fancher. The next book is Apples to Oregon, being the slightly true narrative of how a brave pioneer father brought apples, peaches, pears, plums, grapes, and cherries and children across the plains. This is by Deborah Hopkinson and Nancy Carpenter. And this isn't so much a book of fantasy as it is a book of adventure. It's really the tale based on historic accounts of a family that brought fruit across the country, across the plains, from one location to another to bring prosperity to the family, but also just to make a new life for themselves. And yeah, it's a fun story. It makes a good bedtime story. There's a lot of love and camaraderie here between the characters in the family. And it's also a story of triumph. This is Apples to Oregon, being the slightly true narrative of how a brave pioneer father brought apples, peaches, pears, plums, grapes, and cherries and children across the plains, by Deborah Hopkinson and Nancy Carpenter. The next one we have is Oxcart Man. This is by Donald Hall with pictures by Barbara Cooney. This is another book, not so much adventure per se, but it does focus on times of long ago in rural America. An interesting style of illustration, sort of more traditional, and this is just a story of what happens in the cycle of seasons back in these days, in the early days of America, as people cultivated land and lived off the land and traded amongst themselves. I actually have here 2 different copies, a hardcover and a soft cover. Let's just see, not much difference in the illustrations. So this book, Oxcart Man, is by Donald Hall with pictures by Barbara Cooney, and it tells the story of rural farm life in early America. The next book is In the Forest, Story and Pictures by Marie Hall Etz. This is definitely a book of fantasy. This makes a great bedtime story. The illustrations are all black and white, and it's a story of a small child, and the small child is very much using his or her imagination as they spend a day in the forest meeting all kinds of animals, and they go on their own little adventure. It's very sweet. Everybody gets along. And finally, there's a wonderful parade through the forest. And they meet up, and they're playing games, and hide and seek, for example. And then when it is the child's turn to seek, lo and behold, the child finds his or her father, and they have to leave the forest. The child had a wonderful day, and there comes this point where they have to leave, and the child will be excited for another adventure on another day with all these imaginary animals in the forest. It's cute. It's a sweet story. As I said, it makes a good bedtime story. In the Forest, Story and Pictures by Marie Hall Etz. And then next, we have these 2 lovelies. The first one is The Great Getaway by Olga Kosi, illustrated by Ellen Anderson. It's a story about 2 sisters who were fed up with vegetables. They are not happy about the food options they have at home, and the 2 little twins to whom their parents are giving a lot of attention. So the girls decide to pack up all their blessed things, all their greatest toys, and hit the road. And they run away, and then they're kind of stuck figuring out where they're going, and as well how to get there. What happens in the end? Well, spoiler alert, they make their way home after facing dangers, and they figure it out that home is kind of the best place to be. And when they're hungry, they appreciate having food to eat. Running away was fun, wasn't it? Yes, agreed Jennifer, but so is coming home. The Great Getaway by Olga Kosi. Illustrated by Ellen Anderson. It's very sweet. Little bedtime story. The next book, the last book here, is a really lovely story. And I have to say, it's kind of the start. I'm doing some books that focus on Black history, African American history, really the celebration of individuality and the honoring of the self, honoring the individual. A lot of these books that I have for February are honoring social justice and persons of color. And so I was blessed to have the use of several children's books with much thanks and gratitude to the Unitarian Universalist Church. This one, Going Someplace Special by Patricia McKissick with illustrations by Jerry Pinkney. It's touching. Is it a nice story? It explores segregation in the South back in the 50s. So, and really what it takes for a young girl to persevere to get to her destination, which is someplace special. The illustrations are lovely. These look like they're watercolor. They're very bright and cheery for the most part. So this is the adventure of a young Southern girl who's trying to make her way to someplace special, and the challenges she faces on her route as she deals with Jim Crow laws that were effective back in this time period. So it gives children some insight into what people of color had to endure on a day-to-day basis back in a different period of time. And thankfully, things aren't quite the same as they once were. She finds a lot of support from other community members, and she has a great support system, obviously, as she sets out on her journey. But what is really beautiful is her destination, someplace special. It's the public library. Before bounding up the steps and through the front door, Trisha Ann stopped to look up at the message chiseled in stone across the front facing, "Public Library, all are welcome." The author does include a note in the back of the book. It is this is her story, although she says the setting has been fictionalized. This is about her own childhood growing up in Nashville, Tennessee, in the 50s, in the 1950s. And it's a really special story, which also talks about the importance of public libraries and the information that is housed under the roof of the library, as well as the information and the freedom every individual can find in the knowledge that they can acquire within those doors of the library with books. Books are really special. There is something to be honored about sharing the gift of literacy, which is part of the reason why I have this channel, to encourage people, children, to learn to read, and people who are learning English as a second language. My hope is that they can read along with the pages as I read through these books. I'm just going to quote one of these lines down here from the author's note. And the more I read, the better I understood why my grandmother believed the library was someplace more exciting, more interesting, and more informative than hotels, movies, restaurants, and amusement parks. She, like Andrew Carnegie, whose great wealth helped to build the library, knew that reading is the doorway to freedom. So I hope that you will explore some of these books and perhaps check a few of them out from your public library, or consider adding them to your home library, or even donating some. You could purchase these books and donate them to places where they will be more available to others: schools, libraries, churches, other community groups. So Going Someplace Special by Patricia C. McKissick, illustrated by Jerry Pinkney. The Great Getaway by Olga Kosi, illustrated by Ellen Anderson. In the Forest, story and pictures by Marie Hall Etz. Oxcart Man by Donald Hall, pictures by Barbara Cooney. And Apples to Oregon by Deborah Hopkinson and Nancy Carpenter. Peach and Blue by Sarah S. Kilborne, with paintings by Steve Johnson and Lou Fancher. And Roxaboxen by Alice McLerran, with illustrations by Barbara Cooney. Yes, a very nice full week of books, and of course, there will be more to come. Thank you for coming to my channel, Starbright Storytime.